Let's go. It's signing day. Luke Fickell and this staff put together a tremendous class. Let's talk about it. Let's sound the cannons. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this your first listen every day, one of your listens every day, whatever it is. Thank you so much for signing in. Obviously, today's a special day. Early signing day. The faxes are rolling in. Listen, they don't fax things anymore. It's been a long time. I remember I was talking to a college coach a couple years ago, basketball guy. I'm like, when are the faxes coming in? He's like, bro, these kids don't know what faxes are. But the letters are coming in. The Badgers did a tremendous job. I labeled the show Winning Signing Day because what did I say before this show? I said, how do you win signing day? Well, you hold on to your class. And I've said it, if you're on our subtext, if you're in our Discord, I've said like, hey, I think Lucas is staying. People I talk to say he's staying, but that wasn't a guarantee. That was a battle. Xavier Lucas was a real battle. Getting him to stay was a huge win. That was a huge win. He's a 6'1" NFL type athlete at cornerback from one of the most talent-rich spots in the country with two perennial blue bloods after him. And you can say how much was Florida State really after Xavier Lucas, but they did want him. And Miami was definitely after them. How many previous staffs, how many previous iterations of Badger recruiting classes would a big-time athletic cornerback from Fort Lauderdale have an official visit to the University of Miami, have them throw the kitchen sink at him, and then have him say, no, I'm going to go to Wisconsin anyway. But thank you, the U. Thank you, home of Ed Reed and Michael Irving and, the swag. But I'm going to go take my talents to Madison. That's a better fit for me as a cornerback. When has that ever happened, Badger fans? To have a cornerback say, no, thank you, Coral Gables. I fit better up in Madison. It's a huge win. Yeah, I'm just telling you, just from an athletic standpoint and also from prestige is the wrong word, from a viability standpoint. Like from an athletic standpoint, it's a huge win. But just the idea that you could go toe-to-toe with Miami and Florida State for a cornerback and win, guys, that's a big sign. That's a great sign. All right, let's get comments. Let's get comments. This show. This is just like, this is Christmas for Badger fans, right? This is a fun time, and the Badgers really did a good job on this class. So, Pooh60 says it's a great day to be a Badger. What's up, Pooh? Herb Rosenberger says very athletic class. Yeah, it really is. It's not a perfect class. I'm going to get into some of that. It's not a perfect class. There are spots in this class that I think we're lacking. I do want to get into that because this is not. I think we're going to finish around 20th. That's really good for Luke Fickell's first year. Right, that's a really good first-year class for Luke Fickell. But you're going to have to finish better than that to compete at the levels that he wants to compete at. 20th, if you perennially finish around 20th, unless you absolutely hit home runs on the quarterbacks, right? Unless you absolutely hit home runs on the quarterbacks, 20th isn't going to be good enough. Craig Hendrick says Darrion Varner is gone. Yeah, I saw that. Thank you for your contributions, Darrion. I'm not clown. Like he was hurt. It just never got going. I'm sure he's a good kid, but that just tells you, it just tells you how badly you need to stack talent on the defensive line, right? You can't just get one. You have to absolutely stack talent. You have to get multitudes of bodies. You got to get a couple portal guys, and then every cycle have to get 2 or 3 defense linemen in the high school ranks. You have to stack talent at the defense line because some of them just wash out and never do anything. Darrion Varner is the perfect example of that. John Berger said need more. I don't know if that's in relation to defensive lineman or what, but yeah, let's get more talent. I agree there. Craig Hendricks, Xavier Lucas is signed. Yes, let's go, Craig. I'm telling you, like, there's a reason I opened the show with that one. He's maybe not the best player in this class, but he was in many ways the most important. He was a test case potentially for this recruiting staff to go head-to-head with a perennial power. I don't know what you consider Miami, but certainly a school that can recruit really well, especially in their neck of the woods. And he's a position that we've had a hard time landing. Like, we haven't had a lot of elite cornerback play. Lucas is a home run in this class, and he's maybe the single most important guy outside of Mettauer, because quarterbacks, right? A. Hill says, how did Nebraska out-recruit us? Huge NIL, or can Matt Rule just sell the program? Yes and yes. And did they out-recruit us, or did they just have more commits? I would actually have to look. Listen, it helps when you land a 5-star quarterback, right? And hats off to them. Hats off to them. I've seen people already say Raiola is going to flame out. He's already been at 3 schools. That could be, or he could be really good at Nebraska. You could look at it as, yeah, he's already decommitted from Ohio State, Georgia. He's a bit of a flake. Or you could look at it and say, this is a quarterback Ohio State and Georgia wanted, and Nebraska got him. I can tell you, as if that had happened to us, if a quarterback had committed to Ohio State and then committed to Georgia and then we flipped him, there's no Badger fan that wouldn't be over the moon with that, right? That's a huge recruiting win for them. Make no mistake. He could be flaky. He could flake out on them, or he could play like a 5-star quarterback and solve their biggest weakness that they've had for 15 years now. I'm just saying. Let's see. Mazo says, let's go Badgers. Jordan Stewart says Xavier. Mountain Grizzly says it's a process. Trust who you brought in to do it. Caleb says great class. Now we got to land Willor. Yeah, so Willer's committing pretty soon here. That's part of the reason we went live. I don't actually have it up because I can't multitask to that degree. So in the chat, let me know what the Willor decision is. He's supposed to commit around now, which means it's usually a few minutes delayed. I can't have that up live because I'll be watching that. I have a chat going, I have the show, but let me know what he decides. That is an enormous part of what we're doing here and what this class could potentially be. Bob Getch says 2 defensive linemen, Badger defensive linemen in the portal. Could they know they're being replaced? I think, when you look at portal defections, one of the interesting things to me is the Badgers really have never lost anybody. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have they lost anybody that's gone on to do really big things? I feel like the Badgers do a pretty good job of keeping the people they need to keep. And a lot of people that end up leaving aren't leaving for necessarily bigger opportunities or spots. So certainly defensive linemen leaving in the portal, that's something that you got to monitor. But I think they're not fits. And I don't think it's a huge loss. What's up, Justin?
Hey.
Hold on.
Happy signing day.
Very happy signing day.
The recruiting psychos like us, this is a Christmas.
You got Willor on? He's committing
310, I believe.
310,
yeah,
okay.
310, I believe, on ESPN Live. So that one should be. I don't have it on yet.
I can't multitask to that degree.
No, either can I.
I'm relying on
you guys are gonna hear like sound in the background and stuff like that, and be like, "Why is he staring at the TV?"
It's either gonna be like excitement or glasses shattering.
Yeah.
Like, God, or it's going to be excitement. Logan says, let's get Tackett and Willor. All right, let's head to the bottom of these comments here. Justin, I start off the show talking about Xavier Lucas. To me, it's the biggest recruiting win in this cycle, not necessarily the best player. And we haven't seen Willor yet.
I think that is the type of victory that you look at and you say, this changes the narrative of Wisconsin football. You have a player that Miami legitimately wanted, who is in their backyard. And this is a Miami, people could say whatever they want about what Miami's been over the last decade or two. They were eating Ohio State's lunch this cycle, flipping guys out of their class. Defensive linemen, which you don't see happen from Ohio State. And they wanted Xavier Lucas, who was in their backyard, and they couldn't take him away from us. And that is a major kudos to this staff in creating the type of relationship with this kid that a kid who grew up loving Miami and loving Florida State, we were able to hold on to. This is something that, from a recruiting standpoint, this did not happen in the previous coaching staffs we've had. And that goes back to Barry. We would not have won this recruitment with any of the previous coaching staffs. And I feel very confident in saying that this wouldn't have happened. This would have been a guy who we would have been excited about the entire cycle, who one of those teams would have came in and just stole from us, and we would have been like, what the heck?
It's funny, man. Sometimes you and I are so alike. We're like Legos. We're sticking together. I literally said that exact same thing, almost word for word. I said in no past iteration were we winning a battle against Miami for a cornerback in their state that they really wanted.
Yep.
I mean, it's an enormous win just from a visibility standpoint. It shows that we give that it shows that we're a formidable recruiting power. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to look at it this way. This was, for whatever you want to say, it's what it's worth. I mean, Ohio State and some of these other schools, these are not programs that we've been able to stand up to. Like we've seen it a little bit with Notre Dame so far. That's something that we've struggled to pull away guys from them. And it's, yes, we do better against Notre Dame than probably some of the other schools, but Miami is not a school that if they really truly want somebody and they get on them, this staff, Miami is what, number 6 in the composite this cycle?
They recruited really well.
So they're a top 10 class. Like they were locked down this cycle. So this was a big deal. And they like I said, they legitimately wanted Lucas. This was a guy that they earmarked late in the cycle that they're like, this guy, he's a sleeper. He's got major upside. And even the fan base for Miami admits that. Like, this is a guy, we got a lot of kudos from them saying, and that's the second time I use that word. I'll stop doing that. But this is the second time that their fans were like, yeah, this is impressive. Like, massive respect. He was a good pickup by Wisconsin. He's somebody we wanted. And they even said, and I think he has the highest upside of any of our corners coming in. Like, I love Agard. I think Agard has an NFL future. I think that Lucas has the highest ceiling. Like, to me, if everything hits right with him, he has a chance to be a very good NFL corner.
If he puts it together, he's got the most upside, period.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We're going to come back, react to the Willor news. I'm going to ask Justin about his sleepers for this class, a couple people that he loves that are underrated. We're going to continue talking about biggest recruiting wins, get all your comments. This is a fun time to have a show, man. This is one of the best times to have a show. All right, we take a quick break for our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. That's what we use, and that's what we use for a reason. FanDuel is the best place to get all your sports betting needs, futures, parlays, spreads, teasers. It's all there on FanDuel. Now, listen, don't bet with me sometimes because I just bet with my heart, and the Braves have bankrupted me. The Suns look terrible. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. But listen, the Niners, I still have money on the Niners winning the Super Bowl. Regardless of what it is, my point is it makes it more fun. Do it responsibly, but have fun. Bet on your favorite teams, on your favorite matches, whatever it is. Do it over at FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and there's a great time to join now. New customers with a winning $5 moneyline bet get $150 if your team wins. That's $150 if your team wins with a winning $5 moneyline bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, Justin, let's keep talking here. Willor hasn't popped yet. As soon as that pops one way or the other, I think there's a ton of smoke for the Badgers. But listen, in recruiting, we all know this. You never know until they sign.
Yeah, he's an oddball recruitment too, so it's really hard to know what's going to happen. I feel pretty good about him because we're really the only school that's had smoke, but you never know. And I know a lot of people are not sure what to make of this. All signs point to this being a really good kid. It's just been hard for any school to really get a feel for him. So if Wisconsin feels pretty confident about this, and we're the only official he took, hopefully we lock this one down. He's a huge get for us.
Yeah.
And honestly, they need to start putting some respect on Scruggs' name if he gets this one locked down, because this class, it's not what we wanted it to be, but there's no way that we would have gotten a guy like Willor with the previous few classes. Like, you look back, we have previously gotten some good defensive linemen back in Barry's days, but it's been a good 15 years plus since we started pulling in a guy like this as a defensive lineman. Now we have to do it more often. It's got to happen a lot more often, but the two guys that we got are a nice foundation to start building and saying, all right, we got two guys we think are going to be pieces to build on. Now we need to do it the next class and put some depth into there. So you start having a rotation. Because I
was just going to say, let's get into Willor if we hit on him first. Because as soon as we get on, we'll dive into him more. I want to ask you, who are your, and let's put Willor on the shelf for a second, because he would be in this list almost certainly for both of us. But who is your biggest wins?
He's not a sleeper.
He's not a sleeper. We're going biggest recruiting win. So not biggest player, like the toughest
biggest recruiting wins. I would say the biggest one for me are Dupree and Jones, flat out. Those two guys are guys who other teams wanted badly. And you had a great recruiting story that you told me about Jones, which we will not be talking about on here, but
he was wanted badly.
Yes, he was wanted badly by another school. Let's just say that. And this staff did an incredible job building relationships. I think Steck is a big pickup because that's a room that badly needs an infusion of talent and somebody with a high floor. And I think that he has that. Mabrey, I just think that he's so different than anyone that we've previously had in the quarterback room at Wisconsin. Bart Houston would be the closest thing from a raw tools thing, probably. And I would say that Mabrey is head and shoulders above him in terms of overall skill set.
In that category.
He had a big arm. He's the closest thing from an arm standpoint.
A big arm, but he couldn't move like Mabrey, and he was shorter.
No. Like he played. It was far less. He was far less refined.
I don't know if we've gotten a guy like him. You know who it is? Maybe it's. So there's no perfect comp is the answer, but maybe it's a Tanner McAvoy with
passing ability.
That's what I'm saying, though. That's the point, though, right? Like there is nobody you can point to and be like, oh, he's like that Badger quarterback, and that's what makes him unique and special. Is he is different than what we got because he's like Tanner McAvoy from the legs down, and then maybe Bart Houston from the legs up.
I mean, yes, and looking at this class in general, see, there's a couple different ways you can look at recruiting wins. There are guys who. Are they wins from the standpoint of these are guys who are really going to add to this roster, or are they wins from we beat somebody for them? If we're talking about for this roster, there are a ton of guys in this class that are massive gets.
Let's
for
focus
the
on the ladder first because I have a couple more I want to throw on there.
Sure.
I think you're right. Like you can look at wins in two different ways. Like is it a win because you evaluated them really well, or are we calling it a win because you out-recruited a bunch of schools that we typically don't out-recruit? If we're talking about the ladder, to me it's Lucas, which we talked about already. It's Dupree because you have to fend off Bama. You have to fend off a couple schools. Texas A&M was in on him. Those two stick out to me immediately as guys. Those are big time wins from a recruiting standpoint, holding off blue bloods. Dylan Jones as well had a Bama offer and like 7 other blue bloods. And then Omillio Agard. Omillio Agard is a guy who had 40 plus offers and a lot of blue bloods there. So you're stacking really quality recruiting wins. And I would put those 4 near the top of it. And Justin, that's 2 cornerbacks in that list. Out of those 4, that's 2 cornerbacks.
Yep. And there's a bunch of other guys that we really like that aren't even these 2 guys. Like I mentioned earlier today, I was talking in the Discord. I said, Jay Harper is a guy who is not.
Look at your comment.
All right. Well, that's all we need to know. Willor is a Badger.
Let's talk. Well, let's do this first, and then let's talk about Willor.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin. Fire the recruiting cannon.
It's looping. I apologize. Justin, let's talk about this one now. Where does Willor rank on that list of biggest recruiting wins in this class and in the last 15 years?
He is the biggest recruiting win on the defensive or in the class, I would say, since God, this is tough because he had offers from everybody, and he's a defensive line of position that we like. You've seen my recruiting breakdown of that. That's a position group that we've been bad with. I would say he's probably the biggest recruiting win since, I don't even know what to go back to. It's not an offensive lineman or defensive, outside linebacker. This is bigger than that. This is maybe like Antaj Hawthorne or you go back to Wendell Bryant type days.
I mean, that's a long time. Like Tyler Westfall maybe was a 4-star.
Yeah, he was a 4-star. He wasn't this as heralded as this.
I don't know.
Was he as this high of a recruiting, from a physical tools? He was, but I don't think he was like a mid-90s guy.
Shelby Harris. Everybody remembers the fun times.
Chapman.
I don't know. Either way, no matter how you slice it.
Actually, I have the name.
I'm seeing people say he has not committed yet. Listen, ZYT says you guys have lied. He's not committed yet. I'm just watching the chat. Right. I don't have it on.
Me too.
So I've got Noda says he's a Badger. John says he's a Badger, but a couple of people saying he hasn't actually committed yet. So we'll still hold up. But let's take one more quick break. We have to hit one more advertiser here, and then we'll come back. And at that point, we should know yay or nay on Willor before we get too excited. I'm not taking back that cannon though. I don't know how to take it back.
No. And you even did it twice, so it's doubling.
All right, today's episode is also brought to you, and this is a great one for today's episode, brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. You're talking talent acquisition. You're talking bringing in the right people. You're talking corporate recruiters. That's what LinkedIn does, and we're talking recruiting on this show. This is a great time to talk about LinkedIn, the #1 job hiring platform in America, in the world, the largest professional network, because You want to save time. You want to get the right people in the door. That's what LinkedIn helps you do. Gets the right people in the door to save you time, filter out all the people that have no business being there. All the recruits that have no business coming to Madison, they go to Minnesota. They go to Dinkytown. LinkedIn gets you all the 4-star guys into your corporation that you need and that you want. And that's why it is the #1 ranked hiring platform, according to small businesses, in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Justin, do we got him? Like, what's the word?
We got him. Just saw it on ESPN feed. He's a Badger.
Let's go. Let's go.
So here's what I'll say. Justin Ostrowski was the last one. He was a 5-star defensive lineman. Now, for people who don't know the story on him, had injuries, had leg issues, and just never amounted to anything at Wisconsin. But he was a 5-star defensive lineman. And I believe he was in-state too, if I'm not mistaken.
Ostrowski was
so this is a bigger win in that regard, that there's no prior relationship here with Wisconsin. This is the staff going out there and doing work. I will say this. Colin Hitchler, like, they need to pay that guy more. He cannot go anywhere because that guy absolutely crushed this recruiting cycle. People are going to take notice of that. That is an issue where Wisconsin's going to have to learn quickly. This is like getting the defensive coordinator who's a lockdown. When you have a recruiter like this is a guy who you look at and you're like, we need to find a couple $100K in the budget to keep this guy around because teams are going to come looking for him.
Well, and to your point there, man, think of the amount of money that teams spend on recruits, NIL and all this and official visits. If you're spending hundreds of thousands on just those guys, it's worth it to invest in the guy who brings those guys in, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a resource multiplier if you find the right guys on the recruiting side and you pay them because they bring in the talent, and talent alone is worth tons of money. So yeah, 100% correct on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge get, and the guy who kind of caps off and puts the cherry on top of this class. Honestly, people will argue it with the prior class. Was it 2019? We had the massive class that was the highest ranked ever. This is a better class than that, and I don't think it's particularly close. For people who want to look at it, that was very top heavy with a few guys that really dragged up the composite average, that were high 4-star or 5-star offensive linemen.
The top 3 guys were offensive tackles.
Yeah. And this class, it doesn't have those top like 96 plus guys, but what it does have is it has a lot of guys that are hovering around the 94-star range that you have more, your floor is much higher with this class. Yeah. Which is a bigger deal because there's across the board, we are very, very good. And that makes a big difference with what this team needs from a talent infusion, number one. And what it does is having a varied class like that, it's not all stuck to one position group. Whereas if something doesn't hit, you're absolutely crushed. You have the ability where it's spread out a little bit more if you miss on something, and you can have the opportunity to not necessarily have to chuck an entire group.
I agree with that. And let's be frank and honest. Like, what is Wisconsin's historical problem? It has not been offensive line. Getting an incredible offensive line recruiting class is great. Like, no one will ever poo-poo that. Like, get more talent on the line, please. But unless you're upgrading the edges, which this class does to some degree, I want to talk about receivers. But this class does upgrade the edges, and that's where Wisconsin's been deficient. Let me make a couple of these out. Slim Lewis says, hell yeah. Jesse Whittler, that's huge. ZYT says it's official. Zach says it's official. Darren gives you a boom. This is awesome, guys. Oh, he points out Jordan says Ostrowski was from Portage, Wisconsin. Justin, where do you see Willor playing on the line?
I think he probably starts out at defensive end and might slide in pass rush packages to the interior. He seems like a guy who, if you put the right weight on him, I could see him at 285. Like, he's already 265, 270
right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, 25 pounds of muscle on that frame when you clean him up from just a build standpoint isn't shocking. I don't think they'll get him much bigger than that. I don't think you want to get him much bigger than that if you want to maintain quickness. But that's probably a good weight. And I think people need to get used to that. Like, we're going to see 275-pound 5-tech ends probably with this group, which is closer to what they're looking for. Guys who are 6'4", 6'5", with some twitch to them where they can really get downhill on the quarterback.
Could that be TJ Bowlers next year? Am I crazy in thinking he could be a bit of that guy next year? I don't know. Maybe not. Like,
I don't know. I would like to see it, but when we're this far into a guy's time on campus, it's really hard to say this guy's going to turn into somebody.
I love this comment from Jay. He said, recruiters are the rainmakers. I'm picturing like a recruit out doing a rain dance and like recruits falling from the sea, like the sky. Jesse Wilder says Raphael Dunn, most interesting or intriguing. I love that pick. Who's your most interesting or intriguing prospect in this class? To me, it's Heiberger, but I get the Dunn pick.
Yeah, I think Heiberger's there. I think Dunn is another guy where you look at the versatility and his skill set. His coach called him a unicorn, and that's a very apt comparison. And the reason for that is you do not find middle linebacker type guys who can cover like he can. He is a big safety. Yeah, he's a big safety who doesn't have the speed to probably play traditional safety, but he has the speed to play like a hybrid linebacker safety where you're like, we want to bust you out on a tight end, and we're going to keep you out there and have you use your wingspan on that guy and just be a guy who roams. I think that's a really...
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I have a hard time right now. My mind is going in so many directions with this class. I love this class.
Yeah.
He's a dollar. Like he's recruited to be a dollar guy.
Exactly.
And he's a perfect. Now you never know. Like people have to develop. We have to see. But he's a perfect prototype from an athletic measurements guy for that.
Yep.
He's 6'4", 6'5". He's rangy. He can run. He's recruited to be a dollar. He's recruited
100%
for that spot. Darren says games are one of the trenches. We loaded up on the trench rats today. I want to talk to you a little bit because these shows could go on for hours, and there's certain things I want to hit on. It's going to be really easy to get carried away with the excitement on today, Justin, because that's what we do. We're fans. It is legitimately a really good class. I love this class. However, it's not a perfect class. There's two spots I think we maybe didn't load up enough on. I want to get your thoughts. The first one is you got to get a bigger receiver. Like you can't just get one receiver, and that one receiver can't be 5'11", which is similar to some of your best receivers on the roster.
Yeah, he's effective. He's a slot guy. Let's be honest. I like Darrion Barry Johnson, but he is a guy that needs to play in the slot if you're going to maximize his talent.
Stretch position. You needed a bigger physical receiver, in my opinion.
You need that 6'3", 215 guy who
Marion Stewart,
who can Yeah, he was he that big? He was like 6'1", 6'2".
But he plays outside. I think he
plays on the outside. I personally think they need a specimen on the outside. Colby Young, who is the Miami receiver, that's the type of receiver Wisconsin's got to find a way to get one of those guys. Yeah. And that needs to be, and maybe Tommy McIntosh makes a massive leap this season.
Or
I don't know.
Burroughs, is that good? Maybe, but I think you still need to get him in that every year. You need to get a guy like that.
You need a guy with that type of size that has some suddenness, and those guys are really hard to find unless you find a raw guy who you're taking a chance on his athleticism.
Yep. Here's my other one. I felt like, so you look at the defense lineman in this class, right? Dilin Johnson, 4-star. Really like him. We talked about Willor. Hank Weber's another guy, 6'4". I think this class is also missing like a 6'6" long wingspan.
I agree with that. I think the room got much better, but that's your A+ class right there. If you get that guy right now, like I told you, we were talking about this. I said it was a C+ probably before, and I think that this is a B+ now with Willor. If you get that fourth guy who's just an albatross out there who can really has that wingspan and quickness, I think that's your A+ class.
Yeah, that could have been Nichols. It could have been a few different people, but you need. That guy's really helpful because he helps break up those quick pass games. He gets pressure on the quarterback in different ways. And this roster doesn't have that, right? We don't have a guy like that, unfortunately. Any other spot on this? Those are mine too. Any other spot where you're at, or if you're in the chat, let us know if there's a spot in the class that you didn't really love. Anything else we missed here in this class?
Not really. I mean, there's plenty of positions you could say we'd like to have one more guy. Like the linebacker class, we could say, hey, I wouldn't mind having another inside linebacker come in. But I think they did a pretty good job of addressing a bunch of different spots where we need guys. Like I think outside receiver is probably the biggest spot that you can look at and say we really could have used another guy here. But other than that, I mean, they did a great job. The staff, we're talking about this as the best class that we've had. And I think that is a legitimately accurate standpoint day one. Now we need to see if it pans out. I really like the athleticism of the guys that they're bringing in. I think the biggest difference here is when we looked at 2019, we thought a lot of those guys were accurately judged. I think you and I have talked about this. There's 5 or 6 guys that I think are underrated on this right now from a ranking standpoint.
Oh, give me need to be top two or top 3. And if you're the
we talked about it. Agard has no business being an 87 by 247. It's ridiculous. Yeah. He should be he's a 92, 93 guy. And if you need to put him at slot corner to give him that grade, then give him that grade because He's 92 or 93 as a slot corner. I think he's going to be an NFL guy at that position. Mabrey should be a 91, 92 overall. Like he may be composite, be fairly high, but he is a guy who legitimately should have a higher ranking than what he has on 247. And that's no slight to them. I know I love Evan on there, and Evan has flat out said some of these guys, he doesn't love the rankings that they have and can't understand why they're ranked as low as they are. And to me, I just don't get it. I look at it and it's obvious to me. And because of that, it's like, I can't take this seriously because some of the people seem to have it right and it fall in line with what I'm seeing when I watch the film. So it's like, I'm not the only person that's looking at it this way. So what's going on here?
Yeah, the Mabrey one to me, you and I have talked about. I'll just reiterate because
he throws one pick in his last game of the year, and he's 70+% completion percentage. What do you need to see from the guy?
Listen, does it matter in the big picture? Yes and no, right? No, in the sense of the talent's the same, but what people need to understand is other recruits look at highly rated recruits. They want to play in highly ranked classes. And by the way, highly ranked classes generate marketing. They generate visibility. Like those things matter in today's college football. This is, again, the end of the world, no, but Mabrey Mettauer is a 6'5" dude with an NFL arm who threw one pick in the highest level of Texas high school football, who, by the way, runs a 4.6 and is 220 pounds. Like that,
220 plus.
220 plus. That's a 4-star quarterback every day of the week / year. Like I don't understand him being a 3-star on any site at all.
If we're looking at him at Ohio State or Alabama, he's a guy who's probably a 94. And I'm not even asking for that. I think he should be probably 91, 92 is fine, but he definitely would be ranked higher than what he is. When I watch his film, I like it better than what I saw with Mertz. And that's because the physical tools stand out more to me. He has a bigger arm. He's faster. And you like that body because he's got the kind of body that's going to be able to take some punishment.
Yeah, he's a stud. Like, quite frankly, I'm surprised he's ranked as low as he is. A couple of guys, I agree with you on the corners. I think both Agard and Xavier Lucas should be a little higher.
I went into it earlier. Harper is a guy that in a normal year we would look at and say we love his athleticism. He's just a little more raw than the other two guys. That's the only difference. He has very high upside too. Harper could definitely be in the 2 deep fairly early, and he could be a guy that could be an NFL type guy if everything clicks for him.
So Mike mentions Mabrey's a 4-star composite. He's just an 87 on 247.
Yeah, but it's dragging down his composite is the point I'm making. Like he has no business being an 87 on 247.
He's also I think a 3-star on 3. I think ESPN and Rivals have him as a 4. Like to me, the bigger point is that's a consensus 4-star guy. In my opinion, like just based on the
his film is obvious to me, and that's why it bothers me. Like it's not that he's an 89 or something like that where he's drawing. He's substantially lower than a 4-star, and it's like I don't get where you're coming at with this.
Yeah, I love this comment here. It's from Darrion. The size and athleticism of the DB recruits. It's just a difference maker.
It's a massive upgrade.
That's so true.
It stands out very much on film.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Go back and look at just compile and Justin. I think you have a show coming up on this, but go back and just look at the last 15 years of DB recruiting and look at the types of guys we get. It's not even that they're bad players, like the Antonio Finellis types and the Devin Smith types. It's not, but they don't look like the Xavier Lucas types or the Jay Harper types or Remington Moss in next year's class. They don't look like those guys.
Yeah, it's hands down. It's not close.
Robertson, 1 interception all year should be a 4-star. I agree. A couple questions on here with Rob Booker. Will he flip back? I've been relatively confident in it, but I don't know. I don't know for sure.
We'll see. He's I believe at 3:45 Wisconsin time committing. There's a possibility there. Somebody threw up Cam Dooley, leans Wisconsin. Well, he committed to Kentucky. I don't know if he actually signed. But I know he committed, so I guess we'll hear there. I don't think I would say he's probably going to Kentucky unless we actually see it.
Williams says finally got a live show. Oh, do you got to go?
Yeah, I got to go. But thanks for having me on, man.
See you, Justin. Always good. All right, we're not going to go too much longer here anyway, guys, because I got a bunch more content coming up today. I got player-specific shows coming out. I wanted to make sure people signed before I released them. That would have been awkward, right? Release like a Xavier Lucas player-specific show, and then he doesn't sign. I guess I would have got Miami clicks. I don't know. William Schweigel says, finally cut a live show. How can I know when you're going live? I don't do a great job, man. First of all, thank you for catching the show. I don't do a great job of letting people know when I go live. Robert Sorson says it. Not even Ryan knows when he's going live. I sometimes know. I need to do a better job of that, though. I do appreciate everybody coming. Everybody's showing love to the show. We have 430 people in the chat right now, which is incredible. Badger fans are the best. And you guys letting me do this, letting me come up here and talk in front of you guys, it's so awesome. So thank you for that. Like I said, there's a bunch of content coming up. I think I got Grant Steck coming on still. I do tentatively have Pat Lambert kind of signed up. So we're going to be able to, and again, we're going to be able to open that up to you guys. That's the whole point of this show. Is it's not a journalist thing. It's a fan thing. And the community, we can get together and ask questions that we want to ask and we want to get answers to. So I'm excited about that one. Gray Wrench Mod says, can I get a shout out? Dude, absolutely. Like, everybody that wants a shout out gets a shout out, man. So there was a question, who early playing time guys in this class. And again, I could talk on and on about this class. I really like it. Early playing time guys. Who do we think is potentially going to play early out of this class? Throw it in the chat. To me, I think there's a couple guys, obviously. There's room in the secondary. And when you look at the type of guys that are coming in, Agard and Lucas, both of those guys are, especially Agard. Agard is so technically sound. He understands the game so well. Anticipatory skills are really good. Ball skills are really good. Understands different types of coverages. He could play right away. And there's a bit of an opening in the slot corner position. You look, well, there's openings in the boundary in the slot, but Mabrey's gone. Like, that's an area where a guy like Agard can come in and play right away, or at least get in the 2 deep. I think he will be in the 2 deep. Grant Steck is one that's obvious to me. He's, if you go look at Grant Steck's listed weight, go to Rivals or 247 and look at Steck's listed weight. It's like 225. I can tell you from talking to him, he's 6'6", 250 now, and he got faster. Like, so if you're coming in at 6'6", 250, that's bigger than Tucker Ashcraft came in, and Tucker Ashcraft played right away. Now, the tight end position wasn't very deep, but Steck is a higher caliber of athlete than Ashcraft, and he's bigger coming in, so I think he could play right away. One or two of the running backs is playing right away. I think Dilin is going to slot ahead of Dupree. I think he's just a better natural runner, but one or two of those guys are going to play right away. Kion could play right away. Ernest Willor could play right away. It's hard for defensive linemen. So I'm thinking 5, maybe 5 or 6 could play right away next year. I think this class is that good. All right, let me bang out some comments here because, again, that is the point of this. Let me go back up here. Mike Witt says Dupree is going to start sometime next year. Book it. It wouldn't shock me. Like, he's really good. Now, I think Dilin is better. I think Dilin is more likely to be your workhorse type guy. And then Dupree is kind of your third down, X factor, catching the ball in space, making people miss. I think he's more of that type of guy. But I think they can both play. I'm telling you right now, do not write off Gideon Atuka. He is physically ready. He's as physically mature as those other two guys. He's a bowling ball on wheels. And there's a reason the staff took him when they did. I've said this several times, but I'm trying to, without exactly saying what I've been told, the staff really likes him. So do not write out Atuka for playing time next year either. Got Willor, it's huge. That's from Brian Shetty. Ryan Robbins says Willor will start next year. It's possible. I mean, look at the defensive line. Like, there's not a lot there that if you're coming in as a mid 4-star defensive lineman that's already 265 pounds, like that. Yeah, there's room for playing time. Start maybe not. It's really tough as a true freshman, but it's definitely possible. Donnie Hayes says Willor, Steck, Dilin, and Jones. Yeah, I think those are all good guesses for early playing time. Again, I would add one of the corners in there. I would definitely. I'd be surprised if Agard isn't in the 2 deep. Lucas is more of a wild card. I think technically he probably needs a little more work than Agard. You got to remember, Agard has been schooled from a very young age. He talked about it when he came on the show, but the film backs it up. Brian Smith talks about it. He is a incredibly technically advanced cornerback with good physical skills. He's just not tall. That's perfect for the slot. Like, he could come in and compete right away at the slot spot next year. Right away. Like, physically and from a technical standpoint, he's going to be mature enough to do it. He's played high-level competition. He's a 3-time state champion. He's got winning in his blood. I liked him a lot when I talked to him. Like, he's got a good head on his shoulders. Yeah, I think he could play right away next year. Darrion Wyman says early players, Lucas, Agard, Willor, and 2 of the 3 running backs. I think it's a good list. Jay Broader says, loved your interviews with the Philly cornerback and the Illinois defensive lineman. Yeah, that's Dilin and Agard. Both are great dudes. I didn't get as much time with Dilin as I had hoped, but he's a great dude. I think he's going to be really good for Wisconsin too. This is from Mitch Ames talking about Mandell is big enough. It's so hard for a freshman offensive lineman. Mandell is like 320 pounds, and he's incredible drive, like really good leverage, a wrestler. Like he could play. I'll never bet on a freshman lineman playing. All right, let's pause it there because I don't want to go on and on. I just kind of want to talk about Willor. I wanted to be live when Willor got here. I wanted to just touch base with y'all a little bit on signing day. There is a ton of content coming up. I have kind of individual prospect videos of each player along with Brian Smith's thoughts on them, their offer list, all that kind of stuff. So that's coming up, plus interviews with other players. So on Wisconsin, the big takeaways here, guys, the big takeaways, they kept Xavier Lucas. That is a massive recruiting win. Like the Titanic, no, I don't want to use Titanic because Titanic sank. The luxury liner of recruiting wins. Like that is an enormous win to fend off Miami for a cornerback, a Florida cornerback with 6'1" and track speed. Like that's an NFL type of cornerback. I just can't say it enough. It is an enormous win. And that's the win Wisconsin doesn't normally get. And then you get a guy like Ernest Willor Jr. Again, a guy Wisconsin doesn't normally get. You kept the rest of the guys. You get the running backs in the fold. This is a great first class for Luke Fickell. The one thing I'll say is now they have to stack it, right? And they have to do better, quite frankly. They have to take what they did this year and do a little better next year and then do a little better the year after, because you're not going to win titles if you stacked classes ranked 20th. You got to start getting a top 15 class. That's the only way, unless you hit quarterback recruiting out of the park. The only way you're going to do it is if you stack top 15-ish classes. So this is a great first start. It's a great first step. It can't be the high water or the high weather mark. Anyway, on Wisconsin, a bunch more content coming up. Thank you all for joining in. We're going to talk a ton today. Let's go.